I worked as a custodian at a middle school for close to 5 years, always on the overnight shift. My nights started when most people were winding down, clocking in around 10, pushing my car through the empty hallways, and staying until the sun started creeping over the horizon. By the time the first buses rolled in, my work was done, and I'd head home just as the world was waking up. At first, I liked it. The job was simple, the pay steady, and most importantly, I didn't have to deal with people. No kids shrieking in the hallways, no teachers tracking mud on the freshly waxed floors, no principal breathing down my neck. Just me, the echo of my footsteps, and the steady rhythm of cleaning. The quiet didn't bother me. In fact, in those first months, I found it calming. But over time, I realized that nighttime changed the building. It wasn't just that it was quiet. It felt wrong. The school during the day was full of life, noisy and bright. At night, it was like stepping into a hollow shell of what it had been. The air was still and heavy. Every little sound stretched out until it seemed louder than it should be. The walls groaned, the floors creaked, and sometimes lockers would pop open on their own, with a metallic snap that made my heart jump into my throat. I learned to tell myself it was just the pipes, the settling of an old building. But there was one place where no excuse ever felt good enough: the basement. The school had been built in the 1950s, and the basement ran under half of it. It wasn't like the classrooms upstairs with bright walls and shiny floors. The basement was raw concrete, dim lights, low ceilings with pipes snaking overhead, and long corridors that felt more like tunnels than hallways. Some rooms were stacked with dusty desks and boxes of outdated textbooks. Others were crammed with broken chairs and shelves of forgotten science equipment. It smelled damp and metallic, the kind of air that stuck in your throat. The fluorescent lights flickered more often than they worked, so you usually needed a flashlight just to see where you were going. When I first started, one of the older custodians told me, "Avoid the basement unless you have to." He said it with a grin, adding that it was haunted. I laughed with him, but when I went down there my first week, I understood why he'd said it. The place didn't feel like part of the school. It felt separate, like a different world entirely. For a long time, I managed to stay clear of it. If I ever had to pass by the basement door during my rounds, I'd feel a shiver of relief when I kept walking. But one night, 2 years in, I didn't have that option. On my cart was a taped up list of tasks for the night, and one of them made my stomach sink. Bring up folding chairs for a morning assembly. The only folding chairs in the school were stacked in a basement storage room. I stood at the top of the stairwell for nearly a minute, staring at the door, debating whether to ask my supervisor if it could wait. But I didn't want to look lazy. So I grabbed my flashlight, pushed open the heavy door, and started down. The sound of my boots on the stairs echoed so loudly, it felt like I was announcing myself. At the bottom, I hit the switch. Only 2 of the overhead bulbs flickered on, throwing long shadows against the walls. The smell of damp cement hit me right away. The chairs were supposed to be in the second room on the left. The first was full of desks, piled so high you couldn't walk inside. The second door squealed like nails on a chalkboard when I pulled it open. Inside, it smelled of dust and stale wood polish. The chairs were stacked unevenly along the wall. I bent down and hauled out as many as I could carry, grumbling to myself about how many trips I'd have to make. I had just lifted 4 when I heard it, a dragging sound, like the slow scrape of a shoe across concrete. It came from somewhere in the hallway. I froze mid-breath, crouched with chairs in my arms, my ears straining. The sound stopped. I told myself it was nothing. The pipes. Maybe a chair shifting. Still, my heart was pounding when I peeked into the hall with my flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows. Nothing. I carried the first load toward the stairs. Halfway there, something icy brushed across my face, like the sudden blast of an open freezer. But the basement didn't have windows. No vents. The air was always stale and warm. I stopped, light sweeping the hall, skin crawling. Nothing. I set the chairs at the base of the stairs and went back. When I stepped into the storage room again, I noticed the stack looked different, tilted at a new angle, as though someone had moved them while I was gone. My mouth went dry. I told myself it was in my head. I grabbed another armful and turned to leave when I heard a loud thump, followed by that same dragging scrape, this time from farther down the hallway. I swung my flashlight in that direction. About 20 feet away, one of the classroom doors stood cracked open. I froze. I knew that door had been locked. Every door was supposed to be locked. I had passed it earlier. It had been shut tight. For a full 30 seconds, I stood staring at that gap, my pulse racing. I wanted to run up the stairs and never come back, but some stubborn part of me whispered excuses. Maybe the latch was loose. Maybe opening another door shifted the air pressure. I called out, "Hello? Anyone down here?" My voice cracked. Silence. I forced myself closer. My flashlight shook in my hand. I pushed the door open and swept the beam inside. Empty. Dusty shelves, boxes, cobwebs. Nothing else. Then, behind me, came the sound again. That dragging shuffle. I spun around, heart hammering, light slicing the hallway. Empty. Just concrete and shadows. But the air felt heavy, charged, like something was standing just out of sight, watching. That was it for me. I backed toward the stairs, my flashlight never leaving the hall, and snatched the chairs I'd left. I ran up 2 steps at a time, bursting into the upstairs hallway like I'd just escaped a cave. My chest heaved. I locked the stairwell door behind me, even though I wasn't supposed to. I told myself it was my imagination. I wanted to believe that. But a week later, as I was mopping the hallway above the basement, I heard it again. 3 deep, deliberate bangs against the wall below me. My mop clattered to the floor, water spreading across the tiles. I stood frozen as the basement door rattled violently, as if someone had slammed into it from the other side. I didn't open it. I didn't move. I just gripped the mop handle like it was a weapon until the rattling stopped. After that, I refused to go down there alone. If anything needed from the basement, I'd wait for another custodian. I never told anyone what I heard. They'd laugh or blame it on the ghost story. But I know what I felt. And even now, years later, when I think about those dragging footsteps following me down that hallway, I still feel the same cold wave crawl up my spine. More nightmares are waiting. Hit subscribe so you don't miss them.